Hey everybody, welcome to the Best Pizza Shop. I'm Jesse, and if you are new to the channel, welcome. If you are not new, then you know it is my mission to make the best pizza in Beaver County, Pennsylvania, and be a destination for pizza enthusiasts everywhere to come and try my pie. Today I'm going to be walking through my entire pizza making process, from the tools I use to the dough process to stretching out the dough, topping it, putting it in the oven, and taking that pizza out and tasting it. Um, so before we get started on the dough, I just want to touch on everything I use. So for the dough, one of the staples is my mixer. KitchenAid is a great, reliable product. Probably not the best if you're doing a lot of dough. I have found that I've outgrown my KitchenAid mixer, but I haven't had the opportunity to buy a bigger mixer. I can't do more than 2 dough balls at a time, and even then, it really bogs down the mixing process. I have a pitcher on hand with cold water. I keep this water in my refrigerator so that the temperature of the water when I'm making the dough is always the same temperature, and I never have to worry about variations of the temperature of the water affecting the dough. I have 2 scales, a regular digital scale as well as a micro scale for the really small, precise measurements like 2.3 grams of yeast. I have proofing containers to store my dough in while it goes through the proofing process in my refrigerator. And I think it's also important to note that if you do go and buy a proofing box, make sure it'll fit in your refrigerator before you buy it. For the actual pizza, need a pizza peel. I have a pizza steel in my oven. I generally preheat that about an hour prior to the pizza making process. I have a dough scraper for not only taking the dough out of the box, but also for cleaning the counter. A sauce ladle. I prefer one that is flat on the bottom for smoothing out the sauce. If you have a standard ladle, that'll work. I have a squirt bottle for my olive oil. I have pizza screens handy, and I'll touch on that a little bit later. And a cooling rack to put my pizza on after it comes out of the oven. So this dough recipe comes from years of testing hydration, mixing order, fermentation time, different flours, and the dough is finally starting to hit what I am chasing. Chewy, light, crispy, and full of flavor. So this recipe makes 2 dough balls, about 483 grams each, and they will stretch out to be a 16-inch pizza. So first up is 568 grams of flour. So when we talk about percentages that I'll get to shortly, they are all related to the flour being 100%. I'm going to add 2.3 grams of yeast, which equals 0.3% of the total flour. Instead of using sugar, I use diastatic malt powder. It creates sugars naturally during fermentation, heating the yeast longer, improving browning, and building a better flavor over the 72-hour cold fermentation process. This diastatic malt is 11 grams or 1.9% of the total flour. Going to measure 352 grams of cold water. I'm going to start slowly adding in this cold water to hydrate this flour. It's going to mix for a total of 10 minutes. After about 2 minutes, once the flours become hydrated, I'm going to add in the olive oil and salt. Oil coats the gluten strands, so adding it later helps to strengthen the dough. Salt goes in last. The salt tightens the gluten and slows down the fermentation process. So now I'm going to add the olive oil. Now I'm going to add the salt. From there, I mix it for about 8 more minutes until smooth and cohesive. And I'm going to set it aside to rest for about an hour. Rest time allows the gluten to relax, for the hydration to finish evenly, and for the fermentation to kick off before it gets slowed down in the refrigerator. This process is setting the foundation. So once the dough comes together, it's really smooth, really soft. I'm just going to let it rest in here covered for about an hour. This is going to allow for the gluten to rest, hydration to finish evenly, and the fermentation process to kick off before I throw it in the refrigerator for 72 hours. So we'll come back in about an hour, divide this up, roll it out, and then in 72 hours we'll make some pizzas. All right, so it's been about an hour. Giving this dough an opportunity to rest. I'm going to divide them up. One batch into 2 dough balls. The weight should be about 579. When you're rolling the dough ball, you want to go around and tighten it without tearing it, tucking it under itself, forming a really tight ball. So I'm continuing to turn it counterclockwise while folding it under, making the top tighter, and then sealing it at the bottom, twisting it, laying it here in this oiled proofing box. Now I'm going to let this rest for 72 hours in the refrigerator. All right, so it's been 72 hours. Had a cold fermentation on this dough, and then I took the proofing box out of the refrigerator about 2 hours ago. I like the dough to get to room temperature before I make my pizzas. So over the last 3 days, the enzymes broke down the starches into sugars, and the yeast created complex flavors. And the gluten structure became stronger and more extensible. So that's why this dough is going to be easier to stretch, easier to digest, and taste better. This grandma pie also used the exact same dough recipe. The only difference is I took this dough out this morning, let it to get to room temperature, and then carefully stretched it out to fit this pan. I made sure I sprayed it underneath. I'm going to top it with Grande's 50-50 provolone and mozzarella blend. On a grandma pie, the cheese goes down first and then the sauce. This is because this pizza is going to bake a lot longer than other pizzas, and this cheese would end up burning if it didn't have the sauce on top to protect it. Going relatively heavy-handed on this cheese. This is my homemade sauce recipe. I'll have a link somewhere up here and in the description below. Just gonna dollop this on here. All right, then last but not least, just gonna go ahead and shoot a little 2 Rivers olive oil in here between the dough and the pan. This is gonna help this dough boil in the pan. Now for a hand tossed pizza, I'm gonna toss it in a mixture of semolina and high gluten flour. Some people use straight semolina, but I found that it added too much texture to the bottom of the dough, and it almost made it feel cheap, like a Papa John's or Little Caesars pizza. That's why I opted to do a 50-50 mix of semolina and regular flour. So I'm letting gravity do a lot of the work as I stretch this out. I choose to stretch it out from the edges. I've found that if I try stretching it too much in the middle, I'll get really thin spots. This dough is going to puff up on the edges regardless if I leave a crust or not. Continue to let gravity do the work here as I spin this around. This dough is incredibly elastic because of the 72-hour cold fermentation process. You don't have to get it to the final size until after you put the toppings on the pizza. Gonna take out my pizza peel and dust it. It's really important to move relatively quickly once you put this dough on the peel. Otherwise, the dough will absorb the semolina and flour and it'll stick to the peel. And then you got to figure out how to get it unstuck. So 1 level ladle for a 16-inch pizza. As I mentioned, I like this flat edge. I'm going to put some Two Rivers olive oil here on the crust. Lay some grated Parmesan down here on the sauce. So now I can go bigger on the pizza and get it to its final size once the sauce is down. Put about 6 or 7 ounces of this Grande 50-50 blend. Don't want to go too heavy. Going to put down the Rosa Grande pepperoni, cup and char. It's going in. So as it comes out, I'm going to go straight to the cooling rack. This allows for the steam to dissipate so the bottom doesn't get soggy. I like to finish my pizzas with a generous serving of Pecorino Reggiano. And then last but not least, a little more olive oil on the crust. Gonna let this rest for about 2 minutes. Then I will throw it in a pan, cut it up, and put it in the box. Oh, look at that, baby. So stinking good. Mm. Oh, so stinking good. If you want to know how to make pizza that is this freaking awesome, smash that like button right now and subscribe to this channel. If you have any questions throughout the process, do not hesitate to leave a comment, and I will be sure to respond to you. Thank you for watching. Please thank you for watching the Best Pizza Shop. Until next time.